Welcome everyone to another episode of Exploring Concept Art with me, your host, Jason Etienne. So in this session, I'm looking at creating ideas for landscapes, in particular this ice world, using photographs, blurring them, smudging them, changing the opacity. So it's entitled Chaos to Control. So as you can see here, what I'm doing is I've sort of sped the video up, and I'm taking photographs, some from a mood board that I created, and some other ones, some random images that I created. Took from Google, and putting them into this frame. I'm using motion blur. I'm using the eraser tool. I'm changing the opacity. In some instances, I even use the warp tool and sort of stretch it. So this is really, now you have to forgive me if I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Pareidolia. So it's what artists have relied on before, people like Salvador Dali. It's essentially looking for familiar shapes within abstract shapes, like a stone or a cloud, and seeing a face and that kind of thing. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just putting random chaos. So you can imagine it's just shapes, colours, anything really, and not really thinking too much about it. This is the trick. Okay, so if you want to arrive at really good ideas for landscapes, don't think too much about it. Make chaos. Yeah. So I'm putting all kinds of images in there. This like something that's used in bingo or something, or this kind of thing here, and I've blurred that and done all kinds of, just rubbed it out. Look at the steel tube. You can put that in there. It's just really anything, the more random the better as well. So it's just to create this element of chaos where you are sort of confronting yourself with the unknown, in a sense. You're creating the chaos, the unknown, and then with that, it then gives birth to ideas. So what I did with this video is I started creating this picture, and then as they used to do in the cookery programs, I've also got I then jumped to excuse me, one that I started later. Yeah, so this is kind of like a before and after. So with this one, really, I'm just showing you the process, just putting the images in, piling them in, rubbing them out, taking things out, putting things in, just random. And the more random, the better. Obviously, there's a bit of a theme going on with this because, the current project I'm doing with students is entitled Ice World. And so I'm trying to stick with some familiar colours, turquoise, blue, white. Just things like that. And then when, excuse me, then when I've kind of settled on that, I then start putting in these ideas. So this, for example, I was thinking like some kind of underground cavern, with these kind of like icicles or stalagmites and stalactites, and some kind of crevice, So again, I was just kind of playing around really with ideas. These are just really intended to be thumbnails, nothing more. So I've got this character here, and he's kind of almost like come to the edge of a precipice, and he's got his horse there, and there's nothing really in mind at this point. But then from this, you can start to get an idea about, there could be a kind of story in here somewhere. There's a journey going on, and where's this character been? Where are they going to? So all these ideas should start to kind of float around in your mind about, what's informing your illustrations. And then this other one, again, I really wasn't sure. It's literally like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to kind of see forms, put them in there. So again, I'm looking at this as potentially being some kind of cave, or even part of that story where they kind of go across a stone bridge, and then they go into some ancient kind of temple or something or other, like in what's that film, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. where there's that. It's a real place. I forget where it is, but it's a kind of temple or castle that's carved into a cliff face. Anyway, that kind of did that, and then kind of rubbed it out, and then I did a path, and so this is really all fluid, just keeping things in a real fluid stage. So resisting the temptation to settle on anything. Anyway, so fast forward to later. I'm then playing around with some ideas. You can see here, so it's using the same method, but then these are just a little bit more advanced, and I then go on with these. So you can see here I've got this kind of character in this kind of landscape. There's like a waterfall. It's kind of like an icy waterfall, and these towers kind of shooting beams of light up into the sky. So I thought, oh, I quite like this, so I'm going to work into this a little bit more. So these are perhaps, I don't know, atmosphere generators possibly, or something, I don't know. I just kind of quite like the forms. There could be atmosphere processing plants, shooting things into the atmosphere, or maybe not. Maybe they're for travel. Maybe it's like people can travel by light up into the atmosphere. Who knows, right? So at this stage, I'm just playing around with ideas. So what I was doing there is I was enhancing that image a little bit more, putting some highlights on there, and putting a bit of light in there. So obviously, if this is like a white kind of light, it's going to bounce around on this kind of snowy type area. And then I decided to kind of turn this character into some kind of astronaut or astro hiker, like something like from the film The Martian or something. I don't know. I was just kind of thinking this astro hike, or someone who's kind of traveling via some kind of tank or something or other across this inhospitable terrain. And now just kind of changing up the so when you kind of go from, I forgot to mention this, when you're doing this stuff, it's a good idea to work in low resolution. So the previous and current picture I was working on, I was doing that at about 100 pixels. It's primarily so I can kind of smudge things so I don't get much lag. And then when I'm ready to kind of put detail in, then I start bumping it up. So I'll maybe take it up to 200 and then sort of 300 pixels, just so it doesn't get too pixelated. So really what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of blocking it in, putting some stuff in I wasn't quite happy with, then rubbing it out or smudging it out, and then putting things back in again. So I often do this where I'm trying to figure it out on the page. It doesn't arrive fully formed. I begin by just putting like a silhouette in, and then putting a shape in. If it's not quite working out, then I'll take it out and I'll start drawing a bit more, and then if that doesn't work out, I'll rub it out and I'll try again. So it's really trying to arrive at a form that that I find pleasing. So I think initially it was looking a little bit too kind of formal. I wanted something a bit more stylized, so I had this character with a kind of slightly smallish head, big kind of upper torso, and then kind of smaller legs, and I quite like that. It's got a quite stylized look about it. And then I sort of spent a bit of time on it, and then as you can see there, I think I'm bumping it up again. I'm taking it up to, if I remember correctly, image size. So I'm taking it up to kind of 300 pixels. So it was at 200. Well, it was at 100, then 200, then 300, and now I can kind of really start to put in a bit more detail, but it's still far from finished. I'm working into it, and really, although I've been drawing for decades, I've been painting for decades. Yeah, so this is coming from an artist. When I'm doing stuff like this, I still don't quite know what I'm doing. So even if you're just starting out with drawing, getting into the stuff, even for people like me, I'm still trying to figure things out. So don't be disheartened if you ever kind of feel like you're a little bit lost when you're doing your drawing and your painting. Don't worry. I think it's a common experience, but it's kind of also necessary to a certain extent when you're coming up with ideas, because you don't truly want to know what you're doing, because I think at that point, I think art, design can become dead. There has to be a certain element of mystery, because then you never find anything new out. Sure, I could choose one theme and then choose to regurgitate that over and over and over again, but it's not really new. And I see some wonderful art online, but I do see a lot of generic art, where someone's seen something like a kind of mech type character, and then they reproduce that, and then someone else reproduces that, and then someone else reproduces that, and it's a kind of, there's nothing new in that. And you think about the human imagination, you think about what we're capable of as a species in terms of imagining, then the world's your oyster. Well, it's your inner world is also your oyster. The things that you can imagine are infinite. As far as we know, the imagination is infinite. There's no limit to what you can dream up. So this is where you need to be as an artist. You need to be, don't go down the path, well-trodden paths that everyone else has trodden. Yeah. You need to be freer than that. I think someone famous once said, freedom is a road seldom travelled by the multitude, and I think that was probably in the context of perhaps things like civil rights. But creatively, this is where you need to be. You need to be free of conventional thinking, and you need to be looking, using you're adhering to certain kind of methods and rules, but then, and of course, and some things do kind of remain the same, but when it comes to the imagination, I'm talking about artistically, there's no limit, as long as you're not kind of creating stuff that's that people find horrible and things like that. But I don't really know many artists who do that. People create some very kind of safe things, some very bizarre things as well. You think about something like H.R. Geiger, or Giger, however you pronounce it. When his stuff was created, it was as far as I watched a documentary on it, and when it was exhibiting his stuff, there were people spitting on the windows where in the gallery where it was exhibiting his stuff, and it was quite shocking at the time. It is still quite shocking, So you have artists like that, but at the same time, it's just some kind of vision, But as far as I'm aware, most artists are just acting authentically. They have a vision, and they work according to that vision. Yeah. So don't be like everyone else. Don't conform to those ideas. Do stuff that's authentic. Sure. What I'm doing here at the moment is falling into a convention. It's certainly looking like, sci-fi. It's definitely got those trappings, those elements of sci-fi for sure. And I love all this stuff, and I love all the kind of fantasy stuff, whatever. But this is a video. I can't start doing stuff that's too far out there because I want to give you the tools to kind of do this stuff, and then go off. Do stuff like this, and then go off. Of course, there's the flip side of that, which is when it comes to working for a client. Of course, you can't go off at the deep end. So you have to adhere to certain conventions, when you're working to a brief, yeah. So it's just something to bear in mind. There's usually artists where you could be sort of doing stuff, painting stuff that's from your own imagination, and you're doing it for yourself or for fans. But then there's the other side. There's I'm now working as a concept artist for a games company, or working freelance, and I have to work to a brief. And sure, that's where you really have to kind of narrow down your scope, because I imagine they're hiring you because of your imagination and your abilities, your draftsmanship. But at the same time, they may indeed have something very specific. Like, we want this in a certain way. We want it in a certain way, in this certain, a particular kind of style. Although, in your own style, or else they wouldn't be, they wouldn't be choosing you. But yeah, so you want to be just bearing that in mind, that you may be a person who wears two hats. There's the hat that's kind of perhaps way out there, or doing stuff that that you enjoy doing, and the other side, which is more the commercial artist. So as you can see here, I'm just really I was going to do this as a spaceship thing to the characters, right, and then just I thought, no, I'll do it as some kind of vehicle that's like one of those kind of lunar type vehicles that kind of ride along the landscape. So, and really all I'm doing here is just rendering it more. So I'll put some stars in there, just sort of tweaking it. I didn't kind of make it too finished. I just kind of wanted to just add a bit more of a finish. So what I'm doing here is I'm just copying these stars. So instead of you just doing dot 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 and doing all these stars, what I'm doing is I did use the marquee tool, copied it, Command C, Command V, or if you're using Windows, Control C, Control V, and just pasting it in there. Saves a lot of time. And then I'll press Control or Command E, condense all the layers down, and then copy those again. Yeah, so it's exponential. Yeah, can save a lot of time. And yeah, so really just kind of put a few things in there. I did start toyed with the idea of putting a planet in there, it being sci-fi, and sort of decided against it. It seemed like a nice idea at the time, and I did have a play around with that. But it didn't really. I felt like it was kind of taking things away. Yeah, you got that tower thing to the right, and I thought, no, I don't want anything competing with that. I wanted that to kind of be the focus. That's where the character's looking. I didn't want kind of planets. And if I was going to put a planet in there, I might indeed put it, maybe very, very faint, as if you can kind of just see it as some kind of distant moon. Put a little shooting star in there. And I think it's kind of getting to the end, really, just doing bits of tweaks. So anyway, I hope this video has been useful for you, and that it's giving you some ideas about what you can create. And so if you enjoyed it, be sure to give me a like. I'm also on Patreon, so if you're feeling generous and you want to support me, by all means, please become a patron of that. But apart from that, that's pretty much it. So again, have fun with your painting and with your drawing, and yeah, look forward to seeing you next time. So there we go, away we go. Bye for now.